I've been reading your work today, and just a few months ago, you were talking about how cheap cocoa is, and now the prices are surging. What is the key driver of this market that sort of influences these huge swings?
Yeah, we are in pretty much the reverse scenario now to when I was finishing the book. The 2016-2017 season, which was finishing up right at the time as I was writing, was a surplus season. And the main reason behind that was because we were in an El Nino cycle until about mid-2016. And that's the warm cycle, and it can often create drought conditions here in West Africa. Once the El Nino cycle ended, we returned to really favorable weather conditions in the West African region for growing cocoa, which caused a surplus. Just tons of cocoa coming out of this part of the world, and then, of course, the price drop as a result. Now we're in the reverse situation. And so starting in January, really this year, we're not in an El Nino cycle now, but there have still been pretty dry conditions here in West Africa that have been negatively impacting the cocoa crop. It may sound like a good thing, but Ivory Coast, the world's largest cocoa producer, has some rains in the past few weeks. I haven't noticed them so much here in Accra, but the rains haven't helped. In fact, they've actually hurt. The rains have been so severe that they've been damaging the flowers on the cocoa trees and the baby pods, the chorelles, and the anticipation is that the damage to the crop will then result in a much lower mid-crop coming out of Ivory Coast a little bit later this year. So, we're just in a bad weather situation here in West Africa, and then there have also been some grinding statistics coming out in the last few days.
Explain that. So really. Grinding is a term that not most people, I don't think, including myself, are that familiar with. What are we to read into grinding statistics? How does the lay person interpret that data?
Yeah, that's a great question. So cocoa grindings are proxy for chocolate demand. And so to create chocolate out of the cocoa bean, you've got to grind it down into a liquor phase, and that's what's used to make chocolate. And so you also grind the cocoa bean down to make cocoa butter and cocoa powder, and these are the things that we use from the bean. And so when we talk about grindings, we're talking really about how much cocoa is being processed into something usable, into a chocolate bar, into cocoa butter, into cocoa powder that we use for drink and confectionery. And so we look at grindings, particularly by the largest processors and the largest chocolate companies to see how much chocolate product they're making. The reports in the past few days have been that grindings are up in Europe and also in Ivory Coast. They're weaker than expected in North America, which is a bit anomalous. But what it basically means is that Europe and Ivory Coast are processing more cocoa than was anticipated, and that, of course, suggests higher demand, which puts upward pressure on price.
Real quickly, because we just have about a minute here, you said North America kind of weak. Where do we see the biggest demand growth in the world right now?
That's a great question, and I don't know if it's regional as much as Asia really has had the fastest growth in the past, 10 or more years. And so as far as demand growth overall, definitely we're looking at China and India. I think we can look at it another way too, which is to say globally in all markets, the demand for dark chocolate is rising. And of course, when you're making a dark chocolate bar, you're using more cocoa, which would increase the demand for cocoa as well. And so I think that's an overall trend that we need to pay attention to as well.